Okay, welcome back to part two. This is my interview with Cheryl Bond, where we're talking about, in part one, we talked about her journey and a little bit about coaching. This is part two, where we're going to talk more about her coaching style and get into some more advice that she has for coaches. So, Cheryl, we were talking about you talking to your friends at the end of part one, and that's kind of led to a lot of opportunities for you. And it's really interesting because I'm seeing a theme now with people that I've interviewed. So I interviewed a guy called Steve Chandler, and Steve was saying that I can't remember if he said it in the interview I did with him, but he certainly said it before, where every client that we could ever want we already know, or they're the path to every client we could already want. Just on your email list or your Facebook page, within that group is every single more clients than you can handle. I remember Jamie Smart, who I interviewed. He started his whole business where he grew it to 100,000 subscribers, his original business, from his email list. And he had like 200 names on his email, and he just started emailing everyone on his current email list. I then interviewed Bart Luce, if I pronounce it correctly, who's a three principles practitioner from Belgium and coaches. And he had a suggestion of writing a letter to every single person that you know, every person that you've got an address of, and don't filter anyone. Write a handwritten letter to every single person, tell them about what you do, and offer to have a conversation with them. And again, you've kind of come back again and said pretty much the same thing in a slightly different way of just approaching people in your world that you know. And I know that was a really big thing for me, because when I started coaching, I was like, okay, this is my life here, and clients are out there, and I've got to go from here, which is comfortable, and go out there like on the hunt, and like pack a backpack and a water bottle, maybe get a hat and some shades or something, and go out and forage and find these clients. And the people that were doing successful, they just managed to find this magical place where clients appear. And I think what you're pointing to is that that's not the case.
No, it's not. And I found that um, the less thought I gave to getting business, the more conversations I had, that ended up being helpful. And I had some conversations too that were I just I had a conversation. It didn't go anywhere fine. I Every time I tried to do something deliberately, no matter who told me, no matter how good the advice was, it didn't work. The only thing that worked was things would just come to me when I least, I would reach out to somebody, or I would have a conversation. But it always happened. I knew where I was going. So here's an example. I have a friend. I haven't seen him in many, many years. He works for an organization that definitely has long term care facilities associated with it, although he's a counselor. And he has no idea what I do. He doesn't know what my business is. In a few weeks, he's coming to our house for dinner. Now, I know that I'm going to learn more about what he's doing in his work right now. And I'm going to be able to have a conversation with him about my work and what I'm doing. That's all I know. Now, maybe something will come of it, maybe it won't. But I kind of always have that in the back of my mind that I should talk to this person about what I do. You don't. It's funny. I think when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was always talking about what I did. That's all we talked about was what we did for our work. And then all of a sudden, I just stopped talking about it. And so, if there's anything that I do more deliberately, it's that I practice talking about what I do, and I just do it with people more.
I love what you're saying, because I'm sure so many people can resonate with that. And again, it was such a big thing for me. I remember when 3 years ago I was, starting getting my first clients, and what I realized after about a year was I never tell anyone that I'm a coach. I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
certain people, or I'll do it in a certain way when I'm marketing, but in my day-to-day life, family, friends, people, how's it going? Oh yeah, it's going great. They would have
Mm-hmm.
no idea that I was on this journey of coaching, sharing, learning something about life, how my life had been dramatically impacted, and I couldn't explain why. And so I kind of gave a challenge to myself that, right, anytime anyone asks you how you're doing, make sure you drop in that you're something to do with this. Again, it's not about helping them or trying to sign them up, but at least just tell them that you're doing some coaching or you're doing some course or you're
Mhm.
exploring a different career. At least say that. And
Mhm.
what happened was, like you say, some people were like, "Oh, that's very interesting," and carried on, and that was it. Some people
Mhm.
got curious about it. It didn't matter whether people signed up or not, because when I then ended up interacting with someone who was a good fit as a client, I was just so used to talking about what I was up to.
Mhm.
So I think that's a great point, and for people, if you're listening to this and you want clients, you want more clients, tell people that you're a coach. Let them know that you can help
Yeah,
them.
yeah. And you don't have to have this whole big rap about teaching the principles. You can just talk about what you do in very simple, straightforward ways. And I would say that I never talk about the principles in my first conversation with somebody. It's I 20 years ago, I was part of a cohort master's degree program, and every few years the cohort tries to get together. People are from all over the East Coast in the U.S., and we never get it together. Well, one of the people in that cohort happens to be the vice president of human resources for a DoD contractor firm right in the next town over. And so I finally said, well, I'm just going to have lunch with him, like, so we don't get this big reunion thing together. I know where he is. We've emailed. Let's have lunch. And so that's how it starts for me a lot. Is let's just have lunch. Everybody has to eat. That's my new thing I tell my clients. If you're trying to get rapport with somebody and you can't seem to get a foot in the door, I bring lunch. There's a very well known. I don't know if you have Panera Bread there, but everybody likes lunch from Panera Bread, and so I'll make arrangements to have lunch with somebody and say, okay, what do you want from Panera? And I just pick it up and show up at their door. They got to eat. We talk,
Yeah.
and
There,
that's
there,
all it is.
there are coaches in this group that are both from the US and the UK. So in the
Oh, okay.
UK, I don't know what Panera Bread is, but I'm sure many of the people listening from the US probably do, and sure would love to have lunch with you now that you suggested that.
But and so that's the other thing. That's the headset that I have of we're just going to have lunch. We're colleagues. We're just going to have lunch and talk about what's going on. I have had some of my most successful engagements come when I have absolutely no intent to get business. We're just having lunch. I want to
Yeah.
find out how they're doing. And the next thing I know, they're saying, I have a guy, and then we go.
Yeah, I recently came back from Chicago, and I was on the plane to Chicago, and I really, really wanted, a few seats to myself so I could lie down and sleep. And normally I get that, but this plane was like packed, and it was an 8-hour flight, and I was in between two people, squeezed in. The guy next to me was taking up the space, and for the first 6 hours we didn't speak. I think he said hello. The guy to my left, he said hello when I was getting my bag down or I needed to go to the loo. And the last 2 hours, like I think I went to the bathroom, came back, and he must have taken his headset off 'cause he had his headset on the whole flight, and he took this headset off, and we just started talking. And it turned out this guy that I had not spoken to for 6 hours turned out that this guy, um, we didn't start talking about business. Just where are you going? Oh, I'm heading off to Chicago because I was flying into Atlanta. Oh, he's flying off to Texas. He's going to meet his brother. It was just very simple conversation. It then turned out that he runs a business where he runs networking events, and he does a lot of events, and he runs exhibitions. So we just got talking, and at the beginning I thought, ooh, that could be a way in for me to talk at the event, and I started kind of talking to him. And I felt like that wasn't going anywhere. So then I just got curious about him. Found out about him, asked him about him, made some suggestions for his business that might be helpful for him. And he was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's really interesting." I ended up coaching him, because I said, why are you going to the US? He goes, well, I'm going away to think about my business. And I said, well, what are you going to think about? And he said, well, I've got three elements of my business and it's too much. And so I need to drop one or two of them. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, you know what I found? And I told him I was a coach. I said, you know what I found? I found that with my own clients, when they've got a big decision to make, they normally know what it is, and then they spend a few weeks they spend a bit of time justifying it to themselves. Do you really know which one it is that you want to keep or which one you want to drop? He said, yeah, I want to drop that one. I said, well, there you go. You can put your feet up now for 3 weeks, right? And this guy then obviously through that conversation and just connecting, and he then turned around and said, you know what, I'd love for you to come and talk at my event. Here's my business card. Except I made a note. I need to remember to contact him back now, but and he added me on Facebook as soon as he landed. It was a completely different interaction, like you say. Just even talking to people that are close to us, with just connecting, just sharing what could be helpful to them, what might be interesting. And again, right now this could lead to nothing, and it may turn out that I don't end up talking at his event, but I'm certainly more likely to have something that's of value to both of us when I actually talk to him, rather than if I sit there with my headphones on and don't say anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I think that just about everything in life that we're trying to do, if we take the pressure off ourselves, it's going to turn out better. It doesn't matter what it is, parenting or a relationship, or as soon as you kind of just dial it back a little bit and say, hey, okay, let's just roll with it. Now, I don't mean, turn into some kind of a bliss zombie that doesn't have any direction or any kind of goals. But the more intense I get about something and the more thinking about it I do, the less effective I am. So,
So one thing I wanted to ask you is, there might be people listening to this and saying, well, it's all very good for Cheryl. She's networked with VPs and this and that and whoever. I don't have any vice presidents in my network. I don't know anyone. That can't work for me. What would you say to someone like that? Because I don't think that really matters.
I don't think it matters either. If you find so for example, I went off on a tangent where I tried to work with people who worked in substance abuse because it was it's close to this whole caring profession that I like. I did an engagement. It was fine. I mean, it wasn't that great. Ultimately, now this group is working with Joe Bailey, and they're doing fantastic work with him, and I'm so excited for them. But it's just kind of, you have to do trial and error and find out. Maybe your niche isn't to work with vice presidents and directors. I didn't think mine was. And in a lot of the coaching that I do in the leadership program, there are people who they're just moving up the management ranks. I don't think I have a ton of connections in business, but you'd be surprised at the connections that you probably have that you don't know you have. Just based on what do the people that you know do? Are you interested in what they do? Do you know? It's just sort of, it's not having a lot of expectations for what you need to have to be successful. It's knowing what you can do and what you can't do. I have people all the time who contact me who want counseling. I don't do it. It's not what I do. I don't take insurance. I'm not a counselor. There are people out there who do, but it's not me. So
Yeah.
you have more than you think you have.
Mm. And one thing that I find, maybe we're going off on a tangent here, but you reminded me of something that I really passionately believe in, is within this community, and I do a little daily video every day, and I've done a couple this week. One was about that you're not alone, and there's other people. We're all rooting for each other's success in this. And you're talking about Joe Bailey, and like you're glad for him that he's working, because it's in everyone's benefit that the principles gets more widespread. And one thing that I found is that as I've shown up and as I network and talk to people and just share what I know, like you say, some people will contact me and say, I've had someone contact me and say, I've got an addiction to alcohol or something, and could you help me? And I think, yeah, I could help you. Actually, I know someone else who is a principles practitioner who could help you, probably
Mhm.
better than I can,
Mhm.
and I'll put them in contact. Well, what happens is then we all act as sales agents for each other.
Yes.
And I know I've given 15, 20 clients in the last 2 years to other practitioners
Mhm.
simply by my showing up and saying, well, I can't do that, but maybe someone else can. And I
Yes.
find that it's so great, that collaboration where we help. And I know you're great at this, where like I mentioned right at the start of part one of the interview, that we really connected. You didn't know who I was. I was just some person that had listened to you on an interview, and I thought, well, what the hell? Let me just email her and see what happens. And the worst she can say or is not reply, or you're
Mhm.
too busy. And yet, I remember you very, very kindly gave me an hour of your time to talk about the principles in business, and it was so helpful for me. And now we've kind of got this friendship, um and who knows where that's going to go in the future.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There's kind of an unfolding of. I think it's just I just trust that things are going to happen. I mean, I had to let go of a lot of the thinking that I had about paying my bills. But gradually, as I find myself getting, I certainly I have this contract work, I have my own work. I'm starting to think about it less and less. And also, early on in my when I was starting my practice, I would have a conversation with a friend, and we would talk about the fact that if you come from a feeling of abundance, you're always going to do better than if you have this feeling of scarcity and that you have to try to go out there and grab whatever you can grab. So that feeling that there's work out there for everybody has really been helpful for me. Yeah.
And it's true. I really see that it's not a this is a nice idea, this think yourself into a good place or anything like that. It's seeing the truth that there are 7 billion people on the planet, and I've never yet come across a person who wouldn't have their life better by having a deeper understanding of the principles.
Mhm.
Show me a person that wouldn't benefit from understanding the principles deeper. Doesn't exist. Now, some people might be more open than others, but that there's a very even if there are thousands of practitioners, there are thousands of practitioners versus billions of people in the world.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, do you want me to talk a little bit about my coaching style?
Yes, please do. And what maybe we could just start with, you said you've come to really enjoy coaching, and before you were training and teaching. And could you just really talk about what your interpretation is of coaching versus teaching?
Right, right. So it's the one-on-one aspect of it because at some point in my coaching, I start teaching, but it's not with the intention that I would have if I was doing a training. When I'm doing a training, I do my due diligence, but I come in with a certain set of goals and objectives. I have something that I'm trying to get across, and I do it. And as much as I can, I connect individually with all the people in a group if I'm working with a group. But I used to be nervous about working with people one on one. I wanted to do more of the stand up and less of the one on one. And I've just realized recently that the reason for that is that there was less uncertainty when I was teaching a group of people with a specific laid out intention and expectations. Um, I think that when I'm coaching somebody one on one, we never know where it's going to go. I have no idea what's going to come up and where it's going to go. Now, we might have an outline, we have an intent. It's always based about business and doing the intake to find out what is it that they want to change in terms of their behavior. But I never know what's going to come up, and now I'm comfortable working in that uncertainty um, because I have I have this unshakable faith in the fact that everybody has wisdom and common sense. And they might be covering it up with a lot of unhelpful thinking, but it's in there. It's in there in everybody. Everybody has the potential to have an insight and see something that will help them to have a better life. And I think it's knowing that now I'm not nervous when I talk to people one on one anymore.
And so I guess getting a little bit deeper into what you call your style, what is it that you do that may be different to other coaches or other practitioners that you found is maybe helpful to you?
Okay. So, so I made a little list of the things that I think are important, especially now that I'm realizing that I really love to coach, and here's why. So I get rapport with people. That's step one, which I think is fun. I think it's fun to get to know somebody who's prickly or who's. I have a guy. I've just finished up working with him for 9 months in this leadership program. Um, he was skeptical, cynical. I had coached somebody else in his company, and I sent an email to the other guy and said, "Hey, I'm going to start coaching with Joe." And he sent me back an email that said, "Good luck." That was it. And so when I saw that, I was like, "Woohoo! All right, I want to meet this guy." And the first day of the program, he was cynical and skeptical, and I went in there saying, I'm going to get rapport with this guy, and I really want to get to know him and find out what's up. So that's my first line. It's always about the business. Yes, it's nice that I think anybody who works with me is going to see some things that will help them to have a better time of it. The big picture, life, work, the whole deal. But when I go in, it's about the business. What do they do in the business? What do they want to do better? Um, I always have meetings with their bosses. What does their manager want them to do better? Where do they sit in the company? It's about the business.
And that's because you exclusively work with business clients.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But it's amazing how much counseling I do as part of my executive coaching, if you know what I mean. I don't lead with counseling, but I end up doing people bring their whole life to work. They
Mm.
don't just bring this robot person that's their work persona. Um, I also meet people where they are and then decide where they want to go. And so that has a lot to say about how I think of the principles. So I think of the understanding of the principles on a continuum. And the continuum, it's really simple. It goes from one end of the continuum is do not even see the paradigm. Don't even see that it's an inside out orientation to life rather than outside in. And then the other end of the continuum is Sid Banks level enlightenment.
Mm.
And there's everything in between. And I want to find out where people are and where they want to go. What makes sense for them? So I've had huge success with a client who I also decide whose book to give them. While I'm doing intake with them, I'm thinking, okay, do I want to have them read this book or that book or that book? I know you don't want me promoting books, but there's
No,
a
no,
ton
no,
of reasons.
fine. You
Okay.
can say book.
Okay. So I try to figure out now, okay, so would they like the Little Book of Clarity? Should I give them Chantal's book, Instant Motivation? Should I give them Michael's book, Inside Outside? Should I give them the new book by Ken, Robin, and Sandy, Invisible Power? So while I'm getting to know them, I'm thinking, okay, or am I just going to tell them something that's pretty simple and see how they run with it? So I've had everything happen from I had a woman client who was really in distress, cried for the first 4 or 5 sessions that we had together. She would cry because she was so unsuccessful at her job and had just really spun herself into a bad place. I gave her Michael's book. We talked about it a little bit. I gave her Michael's book. 2 weeks later, we meet again, and she says to me, I'm doing this to myself. That was all all she got. She said,
Mm.
this is me. I'm doing this to myself. All this discomfort, everything that's happening to me, the fact that I can't focus because my head is so filled with thinking, so I can't get any work. This is me doing it to me.
Mm.
That was it. She never read another book. She didn't listen to a Sid tape. She has totally turned things around in 6 months from that one little insight. I have another person who I gave him Chantal's book, Instant Motivation. He read it. This is the big lab who's wagging his tail and ruining
Mm.
everything. And he came back. We had a conversation. I could just tell by where he was. I said, I gave him second chance. I gave him a Sid book. I
Oh
said,
wow.
read this and tell me what you think. And, crossing my fingers, he's either going to say, you're a wackadoo, I'm not seeing you anymore. But, I got a sense of, well, he said, I love this. It's
Mm.
so simple. Give me more. So now he's listened to, all of the Sid lectures. He's reading books. He's at that level.
Mm.
Now, and then I have other people that they've never even read a book. I've just said, do you realize the role that your thinking has in this? How the way you're perceiving things is causing you to act in a certain way, and
Mm.
how does that feel? Do you like that? This is what I did with the cynic. I said, do you like this? Do you like how you feel? You like how you're dealing with your people? And he said no. And I said, well then, okay. So let's figure out what's going on. That's all I did with him. He never read a single book.
Yeah.
But I taught him the principles. He doesn't know it, but I did.
No, I love that because it's, I see so many kind of generic coaching programs, and it's like do this, do this, do this, do this, and what I say to my clients is that I tailor make stuff for you
Hmm.
because I think when you come from a principled approach, there you can't structure it. I mean, you can, but I think it's more effective when, like you say, you're listening to someone, you're getting rapport with them, and seeing what makes sense for them. And we're so lucky nowadays. I mean, I feel very lucky that if I was doing this 20 years ago, there weren't the resources we have today. And today
Right.
we've got all the stuff on 3PGC, we've got all the stuff
Yes.
on Three Principles movies. We've got my podcast, Leanne's podcast, Morton's podcast, Amy's podcast, like
Yep.
a million podcasts approaching things in a different way, all the different books that we really kind of spoiled for
Yes.
choice
Yes.
on what's
Yes.
out there.
Exactly. I am so grateful and so excited about all the people teaching the principles and all the movies and all the books, because when I started, all we had George Pransky's books and tapes, and we had Sid's books and tapes, and that was all. And so now I feel like that's part of my coaching job, to know what's out there and to be familiar with different ways of talking about the principles so that I can figure out how can my client hear it,
Mm.
And I don't get wrapped up in it. Like, if they never read a Sid book, I don't care. And you know
Yeah.
what? Sid wouldn't care. Sid Sid just wanted people,
Yeah.
you know, he just wanted people to know this understanding. He would
Mm.
tell us all the time, just teach what you know.
Mm.
Don't be thinking a lot about it. Don't be listening to my words and trying to say things the way I do.
Mm.
Teach what you know. That was all. He didn't care. So I just want people to hear something that'll be helpful. The
Mm.
only time I would stop somebody is if they started talking outside in.
Yeah.
If they started, talking about a method or something that was outside in, and then I would find a way to say, I don't really agree with that.
Mm.
I understand it, but let me tell you what's behind that. Let me tell you why that works
Yeah.
sometimes.
Do you want to talk anything about a coaching style, or should we go on to kind of the advice piece?
Sure, we can go on to the advice piece.
And
Um,
I know we've been littering advice kind of throughout this
mhm,
interview already, but
mhm.
I mean that's a great place to start. Talk about what you know. So really around this piece, I would love to have you share, what it is that you see, what you've learned that would be helpful for other coaches, and also if there's anything that you see that you think, oh, I wonder why people are doing that, or you know, if there are any new coaches and you think, oh, we talked a little bit about this before. That anything you'd want to get across to them.
Great. Okay. And also, anybody who watches this, I'm happy to help people the same way that I helped Ankush. I feel like I'm in a position to give back, so don't ever hesitate to shoot me an email. I'm always there to help people as much as I can. So, my advice: the number one thing, there is no right way to do this. Find what works for you. What if it's not fun? If you're doing too much thinking about it, then scrap it. You're not on the right road. Um, don't get caught up in that there's only one way to talk about the principles, or also that you even have to teach the principles to somebody to help them, because sometimes it's just in the way that I show up that I start to help people. It's the way that I approach life that helps them to sit back, and then their own wisdom and common sense starts to help them. And maybe someday I can have a more structured conversation with them about how the human mind works, and talk to them about the principles, and maybe not. And that's okay. I don't feel this huge pressure all the time to be doing, okay, mind, consciousness, and thought. Um, in fact, I'm shocked. I'm working with a banker right now, and I gave him Chantal's book. And the next time we met, he said, "Yeah, I was going to meetings and things, and I'm thinking, yeah, mind, consciousness, thought." I almost fell out of my chair.
Hmm.
I didn't lead with that. He got it from the book, and
Yeah.
he's putting it together himself how it makes sense to him. So that's great. Um, and meet people. I always say, meet people where they are, and don't force your understanding on them. If I had tried to force any airy fairy, go towards the feeling with my skeptical, cynical guy, I would have got nowhere with him. I got rapport with him, and then after I listened to him for 2 sessions before I finally stopped and said, "Is there anything that you would like to do differently in your life? Because if there isn't, then we're wasting both of our time." And he sat back and he said, "Well, I'd like to be a better manager. I'd like to be better, for my people that I manage." And I said, "Great, then let's decide that we're going to work on that."
Mm.
And that's where we started. And eventually I did teach him about his thinking and how his thinking works, and the potential to see things differently. But I had to get him where he was, not where I thought he should be. Um, and the other thing I think that helps me is that I have an absolute certainty that no matter who I'm coaching, no matter how I get there in terms of what they need to do differently, it's always going to come down to changing their perceptions and changing their behavior. And there's only one way that I know how to do that, and that's to teach people the principles and how their mind works. There is no other way. I don't have to juggle different approaches. There's only one approach. And it's that certainty to teach them that. The last piece of advice I have, and it's something that I've just been learning over the past few months, is it's simple technology stuff, and we were talking about this morning. Okay, number one, get a headset that works for you. Okay, so
Yeah.
so you have a headset that works for
Yeah.
you. I went through 2 headsets before I finally found what I have on now, these little earbuds and the little microphone. And it works perfectly. I don't have to worry about background noise or any of that stuff.
Can I add, get a backup? So I have this headphone here, this headset. It didn't work yesterday. I've got a second pair of headphones that is my backup. So
Perfect.
have a backup pair as well. That's always helpful.
Yes, I just wrote that down for my own self. Get a backup because I love these. I just need to get another pair. The second thing is, if you're going to Skype, make sure that you have a good internet connection. And if you can't get Skype to work because you have flaky internet connections, then don't Skype. Figure out a different way to talk to people. We have great technology at our disposal so that we can connect the way we're connecting. But make sure the technology works in terms of a practical application.
Yeah. Can I also add to that? So,
Hmm.
um, one thing that I've done here is I've made sure we've got very fast internet. Yes, it costs a little bit more, but again, if you're doing this as a business, if you want to charge people, it's an absolute, I think it's an absolute necessity to have that. And again, like the headphones, have a backup. So I've been having some Wi-Fi issues on my computer for the last few weeks. I think, touch wood, it's fixed. It might not be. And what I've also done is I've got a 4G contract on my mobile phone, which actually didn't really cost me much more than my normal contract, and it's really bailed me out a few times because we always, if life happens, you're going to get issues. Most of my clients are in the UK, so it's not economical to just call them. And yet I always have that backup option of I've got 4G where I am. And again, it's something that I can and I have relied on in the past to connect with someone.
Yep. And it's simple stuff like that, but it makes a big difference when you don't want to have to worry about the technology. So there's that piece. If you're going to Skype, make sure that it works. And I would say, familiarize yourself with what's out there, with all the resources that you have, and then you can figure out what your clients need. Are they people who would watch a video? Well, which video? Would they read a book? Would they listen to something in their car? There's just so much out there now. It's great to have all those. And lastly, if you're going to Skype, see, Ankush has a very nice little setup there. Where he's Skyping. Mine isn't quite so good, but I need to put a little effort into, what's behind me, what's around me when I'm Skyping. So if you want to look professional and be effective. Little
Yeah.
things.
So again, I think these are great tips. So again, I would add if you're going to send someone a video or send them a book, and it amazes me how many people do this. Don't send people something that you haven't watched or read yourself, because
Yeah.
they will ask you about it. Oh, you know that thing in the book that you sent me or in this video that you sent me? And I've had people do this to me. You know what? You should read this book. I read the book and then I tell them about it and they say, "Oh, I haven't read the book myself. I just thought it'd be helpful for you." And
Yes.
it doesn't come across as professional. It's not as effective as it could be. Um, Please send stuff that you know what's in there. Um,
Exactly.
and
Exactly. Yeah, the Three Principles Global Community just put up two new interviews with Ken Manning and Robin Sharbit. Now, I know those guys. I know they're fantastic, but I'm not sending those videos to anybody until I watch them through, and they're, 25 minutes long. So they've been out for a while. I still haven't sent them to anybody because I haven't listened to them.
yeah,
But it's a great point.
yeah. And then finally, with the background, thanks. When I record, I move my computer. This is not the most comfortable place for me to sit when I'm having Skype calls. But one thing that it's not working, I've upgraded my computer, but for Mac, there is a piece of software called Eyeglasses, and it's $20 or $30. And what it does is it allows you to zoom. And I got this. I can't remember where I got this from. It was maybe from another coach. And what it does is if you've got maybe a little bit of a messy background or there's a lot of stuff distracting you, if you zoom in to here, right, and you've got this much, there's a lot less in the background that gets viewed, and again, it can look more professional. And I think there are similar things with Windows, and if you've got a webcam, you can also zoom in. So that's another tip that you reminded me of, Cheryl. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes. Yes, that's great. That's great. So that's all. That's all for me. Do
Thank
you
you.
have more questions?
I've got loads more questions, but we've been talking for absolutely ages. We've gone way over time. But thank you so much. I've said this, I think, to everyone that I've interviewed, that there's stuff left over. So I may, if you're willing to contact you again, and maybe we can, if people have got questions from listening to this interview, maybe we can do another, maybe a follow-up interview, and maybe a part 3 or something.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you. And good luck, everybody. Don't get discouraged. Just keep doing it and keep going in the right direction, and things are going to happen. I wouldn't have said that, a couple of years ago, but it's true. So good luck.
And I would really, and at the risk of inundating Cheryl, I would really encourage people that, if, especially if you want to work in business, especially if you've got some question around that, do contact Cheryl. She's the most wonderful, giving human being, and she's been such a great support to me. So, if people wanted to do that, what's the best way that they could get in contact with you, Cheryl?
So the best way is they can go to my website, essentialresilience.com, and my email address is cb, my initials, at essentialresilience dot com.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Cheryl, and I hope everyone enjoyed the interview.
Thanks. Bye.